And joining us now, Brad Duguid, the Minister for Energy and Infrastructure for the province of Ontario and the MPP for Scarborough Centre. Welcome back to TVO.
Great to be back.
It's nice to have you here tonight. You're in a different portfolio that you haven't had for very long. And so we want to go through just some of the bullet points of this new deal, and then we'll talk about it. The Samsung deal, it's being called. $7 billion. A $7 billion deal. Ontario taxpayers will pay $437 million in subsidies through their electricity rates to help propel the deal forward. It is projected to create 16,000 direct and indirect jobs over 6 years. It is expected to generate 2,500 megawatts of electricity from wind and solar power. Okay, let's get into this, Minister. Why is this deal in the interest of the people of Ontario?
Well, you said a lot of it on the outset. It brings 16,000 jobs over 6 years to the province. It's $7 billion investment in our economy at a time when we can really use it. And also what it does is it makes Ontario sort of a center of destination for global energy internationally, which is going to set us up to create expertise, manufacturing here in Ontario that indeed we will use here in our own province, but may well be able to export to the burgeoning green energy economy to the south of us.
They had a choice to spend that money anywhere in the world. Why do they want to spend it here?
Well, we asked that very question was asked at the press conference that we had, and their response was, we've created the environment here in Ontario through the Green Energy Act that makes Ontario a good place to invest.
The environment. Does that mean that if we didn't bribe them with almost $500 million of taxpayers' money, they wouldn't have come here?
Well, that's not a very good choice of words, Steve.
Okay, yeah, bribe is maybe too harsh. Subsidy.
Well, and it's not unusual. Incentives are often used. They've been used time and time again in the auto sector. They're used in many sectors. Other jurisdictions around the world use very, very similar type of incentives. What we're talking about here is something that adds up to about $1.60 a year for the average energy consumer. So it's not huge. At the same time, it's something that was able to get us to be able to create 16,000 jobs in this province and attract this $7 billion investment.
Here's what your pal Robert Benzie wrote last month in the Toronto Star. You love Rob, I know that. There is mounting anger, he reported, within the Liberal caucus over Premier Dalton McGuinty's decision to award a $7 billion green energy deal to a South Korean consortium. MPPs who were advised on a conference call that the controversial accord with Samsung C&T and Korea Electric Power Corporation, KEPCO, would be proceeding, complained they had no input on an arrangement. The deal will increase ratepayers' hydro bills, and critics say it will undermine domestic renewable energy producers. A couple of things to unpack there. Did this deal get adequate debate within the Liberal caucus and cabinet?
Well, this is something that it wasn't sprung upon us out of the blue. The Korean consortium approached us about 18 months before, and it had been talked about, and it had, I don't think there's a caucus member that didn't know that this was in the works. I have not heard from any caucus members that have been dissatisfied with this moving forward. I think there's a recognition that in many ways this is a vindication for our efforts to get out of coal, which was a tough decision to make in the first place. That's what sort of opened up Ontario to the green energy market, and the Premier's efforts to create a green economy. So I think most members of caucus recognize this as something very, very important to our overall agenda, and that's to create jobs and build a green economy.
They may not be mad at you because they know this isn't your deal. I mean, you came in kind of after the ball was already down the field and you took it over for the last yard, frankly. No disrespect, but you know this was George Smitherman's baby. They're madder at him, aren't they, that this was kind of a one-man operation?
No, look,
you hear that anyway.
I've heard it only by a couple of columnists here and there, but caucus is very much in favor of this deal. Cabinet recognizes the importance of this to growing that green economy that we set out some time ago to create. And what this does is it gives us that major anchor. It's almost like if you're going to build a mall, you need that anchor tenant to get it going. That's what this is going to do, and I think caucus members recognize that.
Well, let's follow up on that. We'll talk some competition and price here. You've got a system in Ontario right now called the feed-in tariff system. Right. Why don't we just start? Explain to everybody what that means, a feed-in tariff system.
What that does is it provides a stable price for those that want to invest in green energy, solar energy and wind energy is what we're talking about, the wind turbines that people see cropping up across the province. They will get a stable price for those investments. They've applied through this feed-in tariff. We'll be announcing very soon, a number of the proponents that will be getting contracts, and it'll be a stable price for an extended period of time. So it gives them the stability to be able to make the upfront investment, to get the project up and built, and create the investment here in this province.
And it's also, if I'm not wrong, supposed to democratize the process. So whether you're Samsung at $7 billion or a little guy with a farm somewhere in rural Ontario, you can make your pitch and it's a level playing field, supposedly.
Well, it's a level playing field, but keep in mind that the businesses will have to be able to qualify, have to be able to get the job done, and we're trying to encourage them to locate in places that have better access to the transmission grid, which is very, very important.
Okay,
as
well,
well.
you know where I'm going here, because Samsung, of course, is getting preferential.
feeling I know
You
where you're
knew where I
going.
was going. Samsung's getting preferential access to the transmission grid. Now, some people who are, in particular, local, made-in-Ontario businesses are saying, that's not fair. So why is that fair?
Well, I recognize that argument being made, and Samsung will get some access to the grid. There's plenty of space left on the grid for a number of other these feed-in contracts to come forward and take advantage of that. What this will do is it will create the critical mass up front early on in the process of building this green economy that we're going to need to be able to invest in expanding that transmission grid. Without that critical mass, it makes it uneconomic to expand the grid. With it, we'll be able to expand the grid. So some of these companies will get access to the grid right off. Some may have to wait until we expand the grid a little bit further. This critical mass and this investment will help us be able to do that sooner rather than later.
Okay, but you're saying there's certainly adequate resources available to everybody who wants to, who is eligible to make a good pitch on this, and they're saying quite the opposite. They're saying there isn't, and these guys, there's not enough capacity, and what there is, these guys are getting too big a chunk of.
No, let me be clear. With or without the Korean consortium involvement here and the amount of grid space that they would take up, and it's only a proportion of what's available, with or without, there are limitations to the grid for the number. I think there's over 1,000 applications we've received for 8,000 some odd megawatts. There's only about 2,500 megawatts on the grid at the present time that's available.
And they got 500 guaranteed, don't they?
So there's it may amount to 250 to 500 depending on how much of the space.
It's a good chunk of it.
It's a chunk, and we had to look at this, and that was part of the tough decision we had to make on this particular initiative. And it was really, it's a $7 billion investment in our green energy economy that comes with it, guarantees that come with it for 1,440 manufacturing
Well, I get that, but
jobs.
you guys haven't really said that. I don't think you've come out and said it as plainly as, look, these guys are writing us a $7 billion check. And you know what? You want to write us a check that big, we'll guarantee you space too. Why don't you say that?
Well, we have. The Premier has said that. If somebody were to come to us with a proposal on the same scale, obviously we'd want to talk to them, and in all likelihood the same type of arrangement would be available. That's unlikely to happen. I mean, Samsung and the Korean consortium are huge international players. But what this will do is it will create a market for our domestic developers that they'll have a lot of opportunities to not only work with Samsung and the Korean consortium in their projects and in the manufacturing and other services that will be required, but there's still plenty of room for more feed-in tariff opportunities.
Okay, apologies to the control room. I'm going to call an audible here, but I got this email actually just before our interview from a guy who says, this matters of great concern to me as a stakeholder in wind and solar in the province of Ontario. As a farmer, I've engaged into this business as it was promoted by the Liberal government. We followed the required guidelines and regulations that allowed me to participate. We as well laid the groundwork at the municipal level, debated and supported renewable energy in our communities. Our projects are well into approval, only to now understand that our position may be threatened by the Samsung deal. To position a non-participant party over a company that has done due diligence from the conception of this government's green energy policy and then pay them a higher feed-in rate disturbs me. Hopefully some of my concerns may be addressed tonight. What would you say to them?
Well, first off, they're not being paid a higher feed-in rate. What they are getting is what they call an economic adder. That, as I said earlier, amounts to about $1.60. What that adder does is it guarantees that they will create manufacturing jobs and operations for manufacturing operations here in the province. That brings 1,440 jobs with them. Our responsibility is to ensure that we do what's in the public interest in all of these decisions. To say no to a $7 billion investment that other jurisdictions now are looking at and saying, why didn't we get that, would probably not have been in the public interest. I understand where that gentleman's coming from. At the same time, he may well still qualify to get his feed-in tariff proposal up and running. So my suggestion to him would be patient In the next month or so, we'll be announcing a number of the agreements that will be coming forward. He may well be one of those.
Okay. Can you confirm the following numbers? Because I think people need to get a sense about how much subsidy for power rates this deal represents. Samsung will be paid, we're told, 13.5 cents a kilowatt hour for its wind power, 44.3 cents for its solar power. The market price for electricity in Ontario today, 3.31 cents. So they're getting quite a good bump up from what the market says you need to get right now. Remind us why that's in our interest to do that.
Well, first and foremost, we're moving from coal to other sources of energy. So the market price for energy around, if you're talking about the North American market price, is lower because coal is cheap. It's also dirty, it's polluting our environment, and it's going to jeopardize the health of our kids and grandkids.
So it's better for us to pay more
so
from that standpoint.
We do know, we've made the decision in Ontario that we're going to lead the way, and we're moving from coal to other sources of energy. So that's really the key reason why we need to do this. We need to move to greener sources of energy.
Even if it costs
and
us much more.
These aren't prices just for Samsung and the Korean consortium. These are the feed-in tariff prices. They will cost more, but the price, it'll be about 1% to the average consumer in terms of their annual energy bill. 1%, I'm not sneezing at that. At the same time, their energy bills as a result of this feed-in tariff are not rising dramatically.
Okay, let's do one more thing here, and that is Lawrence Solomon writes a piece in the National Post, and I want to quote that. This is about the jobs. Premier McGuinty estimates the Samsung deal will create 16,000 jobs, part of the 50,000 estimated jobs that his Green Energy Act aims to create. Here's a better estimate, based on a study last year of Spain's experience, according to Larry. For every green job that governments make happen, 2 jobs get lost elsewhere in the economy. By this reckoning, the Samsung deal will be costing the province 32,000 jobs while creating 16,000 jobs for a net loss of 16,000. And the Green Energy Act will be costing 100,000 jobs while creating 50,000, a net loss of 50,000. Is he right about that?
No, not according to the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure staff and finance staff who are professionals at estimating what these type of green energy projects generate in terms of jobs. These aren't numbers that we pulled out of the blue. These aren't numbers that politically we put together. These are numbers that have come from staff that are trained to put these kind of figures together. They look at international experience. They look at our own experience in terms of green energy.
Looked at Spain and he's looked at Germany as well, and he says that the experience there is that you actually start to contract jobs, which of course would defeat the whole purpose of this thing, wouldn't it?
Well, our officials have told us that we're looking at 16,000 jobs, and that's minimal. And that, Steve, one thing I should mention is that does not even include the potentially lucrative market to the south. And Barack Obama, President Obama, just in the State of the Union address talked a lot about green energy, the need for the United States to invest in green energy. We're becoming a green energy hub. We're bringing the expertise here, jobs and manufacturing capability. Our plan and our expectation is we'll be able to market that to the United States. So we're opening up a new market here in Ontario, and this is the beginning of the new green economy that we're going to need for the next generation of job generation in this province. So
okay,
we're excited about it.
Let me finish up by asking you a bit of a personal question then. You were, the last time you were on this program, you were the Aboriginal Affairs Minister. Yep. You didn't do anything in that ministry that was $7 billion worth of anything, right? I mean, you got a huge promotion to this new thing where you come in at the 11th hour and are expected to sign this. Now, is this a hard, firm contract? Is this like, did you have to sign a contract and we're obligated to give them and they're obligated to invest in us? Is that how that works?
It was a contract that they will be investing $7 billion here, and yeah, it was the agreement to bring them here.
Yes. Legally binding?
Legally binding.
Okay. So are you concerned at all that this is much bigger than anything you've had to deal with in the past, and now you're responsible for it? Are you worried about that at all?
Well, I've got a really good team at Energy and Infrastructure to help us along, and I'm excited about it. I don't think there is anything more interesting than the Aboriginal Affairs portfolio. This is huge. It's important. The decisions we're going to be making in the coming months and years ahead are going to impact future generations, whether it be energy or infrastructure decisions. I'm confident that we will make the right decisions and we'll be guided by our values. which are let's make the decisions that are in the best interests of Ontario's future, the future of future generations.
Bit of a gamble, though, is it not?
What's
The whole deal. This whole, I mean, we're betting the farm, if you like, no pun intended, on green energy.
I don't think it's a gamble. I think it's strategically looking ahead and getting out ahead of the competition. Jurisdictions around the world, including the United States now, are taking a look at what we've done here in Ontario to build a green economy, and are saying, hey, Ontario's getting out in front of us on this. And to me, it's nice to be from Ontario and know that we're the jurisdiction that's making the buzz internationally today on green energy. I think that's something Ontarians can be proud of.
That's the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, Brad Duguid. Thanks for visiting us at TVO tonight.
It's my pleasure.